It is absolutely at my core, and I know it's possible from all my clients that I work with, and I actually really believe that it changes the world. Sharing this work with all of you is extra fun because of my strong belief in the power of this particular community. Having experienced it as a parent and then having had the pleasure of working with a group of amazing alumni this summer. Watching them connect and open up conversation and learn from each other and being honest about all the many ways that our professional story unfolds was a really rich experience. It's an amazing network and support system that you all have with Barnard, and I'm just really honored to share some time with you tonight. So I have a lovely associate. Christine is going to advance my slides, and Christine, if you would share the screen and get us started with some visuals to aid our conversation. Give me 1 second here. I need to get back. Okay, perfect. So I'm here to introduce an idea tonight. It's a different way of thinking about your professional path or your professional story. It's different because, like the path I've put on this slide, which is maybe more peaceful than many people's professional story, there's many career conversations talk about how to move forward towards your goal, how to maybe map your strategy, how to ping from the different rocks featured in this path to build consecutively. What role will you have next, by what time frame and what sequence, and all the nuts and bolts of how you're going to achieve those milestones. Make no mistake, this is really important. And tonight, we're going to talk about the underpinning that allows a lot of that to flourish. The benefit of knowing yourself, of a personal discovery process, what makes you tick, gets you excited, what you're good at, what you're curious about, and then building your professional story from that foundation, from the ground up. Next slide, please. Here's what we're going to do tonight. Let's frame tonight's conversation for those of you who like to know the structure and what to expect. My objective for this time is to talk through this different approach, offer you some new tools to explore beyond this hour and 10 that we have together, and help you get clarity by beginning with discovery. Here's the plan. I'm going to share some ideas, then I'll offer an exercise for us to work through, some personal writing, so have pen and paper handy. You can use your laptop, of course. We'll have some breakout discussions, which is really, really rich, and then we'll come back together to tie it all with a bow. I do know that it can be really challenging to kind of get into this headspace, especially at the end of a day that probably had a lot of competing pressures on your time and energy. So I just want to invite you to take a deep breath. Could probably use one myself. And slow down for a minute. Take another. Why not? And for the next hour, we're going to let all that other stuff stay outside. I'll do my best to hold it outside. I'll ask Maya to not admit any of your extra noise in from the Zoom waiting room, benefit of Zoom. You've committed to being here. So I'm asking you to come fully to here and get the most out of your own commitment of your time. Dial down distractions, get comfortable. And when you're in the breakouts, I really want to invite you to listen deeply, to kind of check your expert status, your expert hat at the door. Many of you have like a wealth of amazing professional experiences, and open up to the shared experiences of hearing each other. It's a little different than how webinars typically go, and that's okay. I'm going to prompt you with each step. So let's jump in. How about the next slide? So there is no doubt in me that you all can win the game of getting the job, of aiming for a goal and working towards it with conviction and commitment. And the colored bubbles on this slide really represent all the opportunities that are out there for you. There are lots. And you react to what is out there. Sometimes you shape yourself to fit into what is out there. Sometimes you might even contort yourself to fit into what is out there. And so for tonight, a little present for you. You don't need to contort. I invite you to start in a different place and to flip this whole conversation upside down. Next slide. Now, on the next slide, all the colors represent the information inside you, waiting for you to unearth it, discover it, and get clear about it. And we're going to build up from there, to start from all the data points that you have at your disposal and to build into a very clear image of what you want for and what you want from your professional journey. So that becomes your starting point, not reacting to, but starting from you. Next slide. The good news is that you are a treasure trove of information. I love this slide. It's so beautiful. Like this palette, There is so much beauty and so many shades and pieces of information in you. And like this palette, there are places where the colors are smudged together and they might need some clearer definition and a little bit of discovery to see what matters most, which of these colors are most essential. The bad news is that there's not a shortcut to do this discovery. There's not like a fast track to surface all of this. We certainly won't have it wrapped up at the end of tonight's conversation. That's your work to do. But back to the good news, it is very readily available. I see this over and over again with clients. We don't really have to scratch very deep to surface a whole lot. So how do you do this? I want to introduce some different avenues that you can explore. Next slide. The paintbrushes on this next slide, honestly, they each represent a full evening's discussion. So we're being efficient. We're going to cover a lot of territory right now. I'm going to introduce them, but here's your job while I'm talking. Your job is to listen for the one or the ones that capture your interest, and then make a note so you can kind of circle back and spend some time exploring in that area. Some of them will hit more, will maybe make you go, a little more than others. So the largest brush, the blue one, is values. Your values, understanding your values is key. The goal here is to really have a list, I don't even love that word, but it is a list of what matters most to you. And to do this, you can sit down and write a list, but I find it is much more helpful to start from a list of values and things people care about, instead of trying to craft one out of thin air, out of your imagination. If you Google values lists or core values or personal values, there's a lot of lists readily available on the internet. And once you've got that list, you can start by really looking at everything on there and asking yourself how much it matters to you on a scale of 1 to 10. They're mostly nice things, so you might find it hard to use the full range of 1 to 10, but I guarantee some of them you sort of feel in your core more than others. Some will be 8s, 9s, and 10s, some will be lower. It's really helpful to know. And then you can look at them and see how present these values are in your life, also on a scale of 1 to 10. Because when the values we care about are present in our life, things just go smoother. So if they're present in your work, things go smoother. And when there's a gap, we feel them. We feel the ones that matter to us more than the ones that matter to someone else. And that makes sense and can sometimes cause some dissonance in other relationships. I want to share an example. A few of my current top values include connectedness and self-expression, creativity, and humor, which I've shown you like none of in this so far in this sort of well planned out presentation. And I know and I feel the difference between a project that is aligned with what matters most to me and one that doesn't. It impacts my attention in the form of possibly procrastination. It impacts my energy, it impacts my mood, and that ripples over into all aspects of my life. So you're probably getting the sense of how very big this area of discovery is, and that is true. And I'd encourage you to spend time here. One note before we move on, your values do shift over time. Not to say that you give up on what you care about. Many things stay true for most of your life. It does mean that in different chapters in our life, our focus shifts and what we care about shifts. And some things come into high relief that were quieter for quite some time. And that's okay. We evolve. Different things are priorities at different times. What was once a 10 might become an 8. So the orange brush on this slide represents your superpowers. And here we're talking about knowing your strengths, your unique talents and gifts, unique as expressed through you. What do you think these are? What would others say these are? Your family, your friends, your coworkers. What have you been told time and time again is a strength of yours? Don't dismiss those. Believe them. Of course, they're easy to use, so they're easy to dismiss. If they're called out repeatedly, pay attention. You can use tools like StrengthsFinder 2.0 or call through performance reviews, gathering. There's lots of ways to gather this information. Don't underestimate your own list about yourself. So let's look at the red brush. The red brush on here represents your motivators and your stressors. And I put these on here because I work a lot with an assessment called Everything DISC. And if you don't know it, it's a great tool to understand your preferences and your tendencies for how you approach your work and your communication. And it highlights your motivators and stressors, which are very helpful in understanding why some professional situations are exciting and others are very draining. you're starting to get a sense here of all the layers that are going in. There's a lot to explore, a lot to discover. The yellow brush represents a backwards review of your professional story, looking for the highlights. And I'm going to table that for right now because we're going to do a whole exercise on it shortly. So let me go quickly with the last three. The green one is impact. I often hear clients say, and I'm sure that many of you on this call with such committed Barnard alumni say that they want to make an impact. And that it's really important to ask yourself what that means to you. What scale are you talking about? Global, local, one-to-one? What does impact look like to you in terms of the population served and in terms of the type of impact? Are you fixing? Are you repairing? Are you maintaining? Are you creating? Do you like a variety of all of these things or some combination? The white paintbrush is passions or interests. What captures your attention? What part of your work has been the most curious to you, the most engaging to you? How do you spend your time when you're choosing how you spend your time? Not what you aspire to choose to spend your time on, but what you actually choose to spend your time on. And a deep dive here is, of course, also really important. It's all important. We're building a lot of layers. And then the black paintbrush I put on here as sort of a catch-all. I guess black captures all the other colors, but what I want to focus on here are the conditions that work well for you. Sort of the image of your ideal professional conditions. What's the workplace like? What's the relationship with your leader or your manager like? Is it more buttoned up, more casual? What's the social element of what, how is that fed for you in that work environment? What is the physical environment like in a day that might matter? Again, the location, et cetera, the type of company. There is a lot in what I just said. As I said before, each of these is a whole evening or an 8-week course or a whole coaching engagement. It's a lot. There's work to do and much fun to be had in doing it. And now we need to sharpen it all up. So this part can even be a little harder, and it is absolutely essential. And for me, this is where the clarity comes in. So Christine, if you would bump us ahead one more slide. It's time to clarify. So after you've done a few of those reflections that I just referenced on the last slide, each descriptor you used for any of those exercises needs defining and dissecting. I mean, oftentimes there's multiple data points tangled up in one idea. We do this thing where we shortcut. We use words, sometimes with great conviction, but we've never really paused to explore what we mean when we say them. We sort of gloss over it like, I get it, I got it, I value creativity, but we may have never asked ourselves what we mean when we say that. And when we go to explain it, we realize we aren't clear at all. And if we're not clear, then other people aren't clear either. So I just used an example. You might say you value creativity. Great. What does creativity mean to you? When you say creativity, what does it look like? How does it show up professionally? And then you can answer yourself and kind of keep asking yourself if you've really hit on the core of the idea, the root of it. I mean, I had a client who worked in data science, and for her, creativity meant problem solving solo technical work. And another client defined it as collaborative brainstorming to innovate new products. For me, I mentioned earlier that it's one of my values, currently a dominant value for me. It lies in creating rich overseas programs. I take people to France and weave together a rich experience for others that maps with a lot of things I care about. That's only 3 versions of creativity, but see how we mislead ourselves and others when we don't dissect. It works with job titles too. If you find yourself saying that the greatest job you ever had was in account management, let's say. So you might go looking for more account management jobs, and that might be perfect. But I would encourage you to get really clear about the what in the job that was the golden piece. Account management looks a lot different in different places. Were you selling? Were you managing? Was it about the customer? Was it about a product? Were you solving people's problems? Were you solving challenges in the system? Was it about data? Was it about the work? What was it about the workplace? And on and on. There's a lot to clarify. And I know that everybody's holiday season this year will look a little bit different. So if you're wondering how you might spend some of the quieter time, you can dive into some of these exercises and some of the clarifying work that needs to go with it. And after you've kind of unearthed all of this great data about you and you clean it all up, all of that effort, something really exciting starts to happen. You get to layer it all back together and create a clear image. So Christine will do one more slide. The image that we create is for you, that you create is for you, and it's for others. Like all of those brushstrokes come together to make something that is really easily understood. And I'll say it again, by you, first and foremost. And then in turn, by others. The pieces all come together and tell you something. They create a picture. I guarantee you they communicate to you. Individually, not so much. But when they all come together, some things become really obvious. And one, it's a picture that is really easy for you to own. You don't have to struggle to remember it. It came wholly from you. So then what do? You have this pretty picture. What do you do now? You use this to shift to action. You use this for conversations, for discovery, for networking. I mean, maybe this image helps you maximize exactly where you work, your current role, by steering you in subtle ways to get more alignment with where you're at. Maybe it helps you begin an important new job search, and you can lay all the essential and important job searching skills on top of it. Or maybe this image helps you realize that the mix of your current life, some combination of family and work and volunteer, is exactly right for you. I mean, what a relief. I had this happen to a client recently. She felt there was a big question to answer. The question was that exactly the mix she had was the right mix for her right now. Or maybe it's time to shake up the recipe. The image isn't fixed. The image is actually an invitation to discussion and experimentation into some action on your part. Next slide. You can use the image in a couple ways, in lots of ways, right? You can use it as a radar. You know the adage that some, I think, like crazy percentage of jobs, I'm not going to quote it because I won't get it right, aren't posted. They're the part of the iceberg that's underneath the water, hidden from view. Well, now you have a way to articulate what you're looking for and shine the light on some hidden opportunities that might have been missed before due to your lack of clarity. You can use it as a guardrail to remind you when you're near an edge, when you're straying away from all that you know. You can decide whether you want to do that, which is perfectly awesome, by choice, or pull back. You can use it as a filter when you're considering new opportunities, for example. It will help you to see whether you're contorting to align with what they want or whether you are actually in alignment with yourself. The choice of what to do with that information is yours. It's really helpful to have your eyes wide open. It's unbelievably powerful. It's really important to note too that your painting isn't static. It's going to keep changing always. It's not a contract. It's not a holy grail. Don't want to get so locked into this learning that you don't make modifications over time. You really want to find your best first steps to move you forward. When I worked with young alumni this summer, it's one of the things that they said that was so useful is, oh, if I design an image for myself and I really get to know myself, it is helpful to understand that it's not an all or nothing proposition. There's a lot I can have that's along the way. For example, in this painting, like maybe the landscape is available right now, but not the farmhouse. You can keep moving towards also having the farmhouse. And as you have discussions and trial and experimentation and new experiences, it will all shift and adapt. I told you before that I value connectedness. I can't even see a single one of your faces, so I hope you're with me, but we are in like a both and mode. All the traditional world-facing job, skill, work is essential. And the internal discovery is essential. And action, discussion, what I would call play, is essential. Let's give one of these exercises a whirl. I'm worried we have someone who's not on mute. Is that at my end? I hope not.
Karen, we're receiving some feedback.
Yeah, I hear that. I don't know if someone's not on mute or if it's at my end. Better?
Yes, much better.
I think it's better. Okay, great. Okay, well, good. Because honestly, now we're going to move to an exercise for all of you to do. So what perfect timing to have a little tech gaflooey in there. Christine, will you put up a slide to explain, or that I can use to explain? Thank you. Okay. The yellow paintbrush from earlier was an exercise about finding the shiny highlights from your professional story. And I think of this exercise like a ride in a hot air balloon, or when we used to be able to get on airplanes regularly, sort of the view from 30,000 feet. And we're going to spend the remainder of our time focused here as a way for you to experience what some of this discovery is like, and a chance for you to get to talk to one another and not stare at Zoom any longer than necessary. So first, let me explain, and then I'm going to give you time to do some writing, about 10 minutes. And then we'll get into groups with some specific discussion prompts, and then we'll come back together. So let me explain first, and I will put up a slide that will have all the information you need. So for now, you can just listen. The way this exercise works is that you imagine that you're up in the sky, either in the balloon or the plane, and you're looking over your, you know, when you're up there and you look down and like the sun is out and it hits something shiny and shines that light right back up at you, it captures something, an object. Well, we're going to use that same thing, imagining that the terrain we're hovering over is your adult professional life, sort of the story of you. The terrain is you. And you're going to hover above it and see what catches the light, what's shiny, what matters, what's important. The things that pop out will be different for everyone, of course, and the criteria you use to decide what is important will also be different for each of you. They can be moments that catch the light because they were fulfilling, exciting, deeply satisfying, fun, that you're proud of them, that you were in flow while you did them. They can be whole chapters, whole jobs. They look a lot different, whatever shiny really means to you. And you can have a really wide lens here when I say like your adult professional life, meaning think about your whole, really your whole life, not just your paid work stuff, because all areas of contribution have shininess in them. And sometimes the greatest clues are outside of the lanes that we've been playing in and calling our work lane. And then once you have the start of a list, of course, this is something you can spend more time on over the holiday. You'll come back and color it in some more. Once you have the start of a list, your shiny objects that you see from the sky, your job is to pick one and zoom down and examine it much more closely. As we discussed earlier, getting really granular and clear is also extremely valuable. So getting up close to one of the items on your list, one of the moments, one of the experiences professionally, and find out what made it shiny. I want to make one thing clear. Your idea when you get granular is not to describe it in detail. So let's say my shiny moment is launching my business. I'm not going to tell, the idea isn't for me to describe all that went into launching a business. The idea is to get granular about what made that shiny to me. What about that creation was important to me? Always focusing on the shine factor. So Christine, if you'd advance one more slide. Perfect. Everything you really need is on this slide. So get comfortable in your spot. Crack open a fresh page on a piece of paper or a new screen, and I'll let you know when 10 minutes is up, and then I'll explain the format for the breakouts. This slide is going to stay up for the next 10 minutes while you do some writing and answer to the questions that are on here. And if you have a question, if you're stuck with the directions, go ahead and pop it in the chat.